I'm reliving a little history here. I first saw this film 60 years ago. Well, 59 to be exact, 1966. Glen Alps had finished his 16mm color film, the Collagraph, and myself and the students were to see that. And just today, August 13, 2025, I finally located a source where I could download it or stream it and watch this historic video. It's somewhat obscure. I found a lot of people didn't know it exists, and with the help of a librarian, I located it as part of the Seattle Art Museum collection, I think. And so I'm taking a look. I think I might review the film. No one else has reviewed it in 60 years, which is kind of strange, because Glen made history. He made history. He gave it the name, Collagraph. And I know what that environment was like when Glen was teaching. It was hostile to printmaking. It was a painter-run department, and many people don't think the print is a real art form, and so he had to struggle. They wouldn't allow him to show the art on the first floor, that art from his students' classes. But he struggled and he pushed, and I think he got his lead from Mauricio Lasansky in Iowa. And Lasansky is famous for having created the printmaking MFA, Master of Fine Arts. And he in turn took his lessons from William Hayter. So there's a lineage running from Hayter through Lasansky to Alps, and it comes to pioneering techniques. And I guess some of that sort of brushed off on me in the 19 years that I was there. Well, thank you for watching. I'm Bill Ritchie.
The Collagraph, as an original means of expression, had its beginning at the University of Washington School of Art during the fall quarter of 1956. It began because of a long search for a more direct and spontaneous approach to printmaking. The experiments included the printing of various natural and man-made relief textures in materials of many kinds. Then, as a means to achieve better proofs, these materials and shapes were glued to a flat surface such as a sheet of plywood, Epsom board, or masonite. The immediate product, because of the technique of gluing various materials on a flat surface, was a collage, a French term meaning pasting or the gluing together of materials or objects. Since the experiments were conducted within the printmaking area, proofs were pulled from these collages in the traditional techniques of relief, roll-up, and intaglio printing. The first results were so encouraging, we realized from the beginning that a name for this form of printmaking was necessary. Since we were working with collage as a graphic medium, I gave to this invented process the very meaningful descriptive name, Collagraph. Because of this development and the inclusion of one of my collagraphs in the Brooklyn Art Museum print exhibition in 1958, the Collagraph technique is being used by artists in nearly all parts of the world, even though they may not call it by this name. Collagraphs have been widely accepted in exhibitions and as acquisitions wherever art museums and print collectors exist. It seems that it is a contemporary necessity that the collagraph has been brought into being. Here you see some collagraph plates and prints. In printmaking, there are two primary factors involved: the making of the plate and the printing of the plate. However, the first concern of the printmaker is in the development of the plate, where the individuality of the artist has its chance to take form. This is where the love for the plate has meaning. To do a collagraph, the artist can, of course, approach the plate very spontaneously and directly, or quite deliberately. I have begun by doing a charcoal drawing to clarify visually, to some extent, the concept I intend to express. Either approach can be very rewarding to the involved artist. Here is an Epsom board plate, the exact size of the drawing, cut with straight edges. These edges are filed and sanded very carefully until smooth. First with a rather coarse file, then with a fine grit of sandpaper. After the plate is in shape from filing and sanding, the edges of the back and plate are given 3 coats of clear brushing lacquer. White lacquer or glue can also be used to assure easy removal of any excess ink which might collect on the edges or on the back of the plate. Now to transfer the drawing to the plate, triangles have been cut out of each corner of the drawing for purposes of registration. The drawing is placed face down upon the unlacquered surface of the plate and rubbed. By rubbing firmly, a sufficient amount of charcoal comes off so the arrangement can easily be seen as a guide in manipulation of all the component parts which go to make up a work of art. This area of the plate is dampened to prevent the moisture in the glue from being absorbed too quickly. Elmer's glue is being used here and is brushed on as evenly as possible. Stencil paper is adhered to the plate to obtain a rather light overall area. It is very important to securely glue every part that goes into the work so that a durable plate will be developed. Now additional work will be done on this surface of the stencil paper. Here the glue is applied directly to the plate from its container. It is used as a drawing medium. Ground up walnut shells are sprinkled over the entire glued area and carefully pressed into the wet glue. The excess is removed, saved, and can be used again. The walnut shell, as well as other materials, must be firmly embedded into the glue because the plate receives quite a severe going over in the process of inking up and in the pulling of proofs. Ground up walnut shells in this form can usually be purchased in hardware and paint stores. It is used in the building trade as an additive to paint, for texturing walls, and for surfacing boat decks. This detail shows the glue and glue container being used as a drawing instrument to achieve descriptive line. The shell is being pressed into the wet glue by placing a piece of mat board over the area and rubbing by hand. Here, as you can see, the plate has been further developed with walnut shells. A belt sander is used to smooth off the cluster of peaks to the extent that they will not carry the ink, but rather the areas in between the clusters of peaks will print black. The lower portion is being left unsanded to carry a deeper and more even blackness in variation to the areas above. A number of materials in the making of a Collagraph plate are shown here. Elmer's glue, gesso, modeling paste, clear lacquer, Liquitex, Silver Magic, which is an auto putty, Durham's putty, white lacquer, plastic wood, brush bristles, planer shavings, walnut shells, wood shavings, sawdust of all kinds, fine and coarse, medium, pencil shavings, also string, and various kinds of paper, and an assortment of cloth. All these can be used as aesthetic media. The surface of the plate has been further worked mainly by the addition and quality of coarse and fine sawdust. Two textures have been used. The darker areas are coarse, the lighter areas are made with finer grit sawdust. Additional drawing was needed to further clarify the concept. Charcoal is used as the medium. The rough texture of the sawdust is noticeable. In intaglio work, the rougher the area, the more ink is held, and therefore prints blacker. The smoother the surface, the lighter the area prints, because it does not hold as much ink on the plate. Here you see the drawing has been transferred to a sheet of pebble finish mat board as a guide in cutting various kinds of shapes to incorporate into the plate. A mat knife is used to achieve this particular task. It is very important that the edges be beveled away from the center of the shape to keep ink from collecting underneath and squashing out in the printing. Therefore, the knife is held at an angle when cutting to accomplish this detail. Tin snips are wonderful tools for cutting shapes in heavy paper or cardboard. They are designed so they cut with ease. Every shape, from the very beginning, has its place as a meaningful component part of the work. But as everything else in the work is always subject to readjustment, rearrangement, or re-evaluation. To enrich the surface and intensify the movement, white lacquer is used in relation to some of the cut shapes. To continue building up the plate, brushing techniques are used, such as Durham's putty mixed with Elmer's glue and applied with various knives or brushes. And modeling paste is worked directly into and on top of the coarse sawdust areas with the fingers. Foil is pressed into the wet modeling paste to add value to the surfaces. Plastic wood is used from the tube and worked into the plate and moved around with a knife or with a finger. This surface can also be sanded or scraped for further aesthetic reasons. Sharp pointed tools are used to incorporate line in any of the wet media or after the medium is dry. Lacquered, clear or white, or glued areas form a fine base for cutting or engraving lines. More Durham's putty is brushed and worked into the plate. We are ready to pull a proof to further see how things work within the plate. A blind emboss is to be printed. First, the plate is put on the bed of the press, then the cardboard or heavy paper, next the thick felts, and under extreme pressure, the proof is pulled. Wet or dry paper is used according to the artist's wishes. This is a particularly fine, well-made press which was designed by me and built to my specifications. A proof made without ink, the aesthetic effectiveness of embossed art depends upon the way textures, in relief, reflect light, as well as the sensitivity of the lighting. In the inking up the plate for intaglio printing, to keep the hands clean for later handling of paper, cloth-lined plastic gloves are worn. A 4-inch scrub brush is being used to ink up the plate. A special Collagraph ink is used, which is very smoothly ground, very black, and quite buttery in quality. The ink, as well as the press, is manufactured in Seattle, Washington. The ink is scrubbed vertically, horizontally, and diagonally to assure complete integration of ink to plate. Various types of rags are used to wipe the plate because of their greater absorption quality. A tight wad of cloth, smooth on the bottom, is wiped all across the plate. A new rag or another rag is rewadded. The plate is rotated, more wiping. This continues until the artist feels it is enough. Then with a rather hard, clean cloth, carefully wadded, the plate is briskly wiped in all directions to pull up the brilliance of the plate. It is important to thoroughly wipe off the excess ink which might have collected around the edges. With the press pressure tested and set, a clean, dry sheet of newsprint is placed on the bed of the press. The plate is positioned in the center for printing. Many kinds of paper are used in printmaking. This happens to be Tuscan, a good proofing paper. For regular editions, the real fine rag papers should be used. Tuscan is soaked for 2 minutes, then blotted with well-aged newspapers. White blotters also can be used for this purpose. 2 blottings are usually sufficient to take off all the surface water. However, a time saver in pulling editions is to damp press the paper a day ahead of printing. No blotting is necessary. With the gloves removed, paper can easily be handled without fingerprints appearing. By holding the paper on opposite corners, it can be centered upon the plate without buckling. Another dry sheet of newsprint is placed on the damp paper to help keep the felts dry and soft. A thick felt or felts are put into place, smoothed out, then the press is activated. The paper is carefully peeled from the plate. The first proof is pulled. Here it is, and ready to be stretched. To have a professional proof, one must stretch the damp paper or place it under weights. The proof is placed on a smooth board or wall. Gum paper tape is dampened and placed around the edges in this particular manner. When the day's printing is finished, the plate must be cleaned with kerosene so there will be no ink left to dry and spoil the detail of the work. Cleaning the plate is very important. 20 to 50 proofs can be pulled from a well-built plate. Incidentally, multiple images are not the primary concern of most fine printmakers. Many would do a plate even if they could only pull one good proof. And now to look at a few collagraphs of mine. Collagraph 21, a print with rich variety of surface qualities, high contrast of value and movement generate depth connotations. In Collagraph 15, the black space seems deep and inactive, while the white shapes are active, moving, floating, with variations of value to move them backward and forward, as well as up and down, and from side to side. Collagraph D has been developed by pressing a variety of items into the plate. Glue putty was rolled over selected areas to intensify the emboss. Brushed stippled lacquer was used to achieve a close transition from black to white. In celestial activity, the enclosed space variations are as important as the unconfined emptiness. In Colorado blue, a print of 4 plates is of the great blue sky and magnificent white clouds seen in Colorado. Involving revolving sphere is from a plate of 3 parts, both relief and intaglio, printed at one time. Involving depth, revolving motion, static rests are the major concerns of this work. Yellow rectangle, made from 3 intaglio plates, is an interplay of shapes and space which manipulate the eye in channels of movement. This detail shows the elements involved fusing and separating to create a kind of mystical vibration or equivocation. Growing hill is of 2 plates, utilizing lacquer, shells, sawdust to achieve the effect of uplifting tranquility and the excitement of activity of growing.